Welcome to the Streets and People podcast presented by Get Around Cabo Car Free. Get Around Cabo Car Free is a volunteer community movement advocating for more transport options for people who can't drive in Caboolture and Morayfield in Queensland. In today's podcast, we'll be covering one of these three broad topics. It might be Road Rules 360, where we discuss Queensland's road rules, the legislation, the design for people walking, biking, in wheelchairs or on a scooter. It might be Not Everyone Drives, where we chat with people whose transport options don't include a car in a car-dependent society. And it might be People and Projects, where our conversations are with people working on a specific aspect of inclusive transportation. It's Wendy and I'm here with Dolores. We're here on Gubbi Gubbi Country, and today it's one of our People and Projects episodes where we talk with people who have a bit of a special project, people who are interested in the community, getting the community moving, active, and are speaking to a particular thing. Now, I know you because I bumped into you while I was madly dashing off to a meeting with the mayor and some councillors.
Yes.
And I just saw you, and I think, were you on a bike?
I was.
Okay.
I was.
And I will just go up to anybody and say, join my Facebook group.
I think you might have handed me a brochure and said what you were involved in and did I know about it. And I think from there I joined your Facebook group.
At that time, all we had was a Facebook group.
Right.
So now we've got a website and we've got podcasts.
How wonderful.
And then Mia, who came on our show a few
Yes.
weeks ago, Mia and I had a bit of a chat about her research project. She was beautiful. I actually
Yes.
met her mum this morning. I was
Oh,
on the
did you?
Wangaran Rail Trail.
I was on it this morning too.
Ah, there you are. Well, you might well have bumped into Mia's mum too. I thought the reason that would be really good to have you on the show is I heard that you run a bicycle riding group with some people at U3A.
U3A is the short version of University of the Third Age, which has nothing to do with universities. We're all pretty much retirees, and it's a time in your life when you're free to explore whatever you wish. So they offer many different courses, and one of them is cycling.
So did you approach U3A and said, I would like to start a cycling group?
Yeah, pretty much.
It's with a mixed demographic.
Correct, yes. Males and females, majority are retired. We ride every fortnight, starting at 6 in the summer and around 6:30 in the winter.
Do you ride just around Caboolture?
No.
Whereabouts?
I decided that the safest, for safety reasons, I would prefer to stick to the rail trail. So we only do the rail trail every fortnight, though there was a suggestion that we go somewhere else and do it, but as an added extra down the track, so for whoever wants.
I had this idea, when you think of the word cycling, you might think of some man or woman in tight lycra with a shiny helmet on a racing bicycle, and I support cycling,
Yes.
but I do find there is something about the sort of lycra that even I find unsettling, so I don't know what that's about. I thought, let's see if we can shift some of the idea and image of what does it mean to be cycling, because I think I have my bike and I just poodle around everywhere. I don't know, I'm definitely never wear lycra. I don't think I've even owned any lycra. And there's a group in Brisbane called Brisbane Style Over Speed, and what they are about is they get dressed in sort of stylish clothes and they go for an ordinary bike ride. They sort of get dressed up in something a little bit fancy,
Right.
and then they just go for a bicycle ride.
Yes.
And they did this in Turkey, actually.
Mm-hmm.
They were going for 10 years, and I think they went for an annual ride in all different cities in Turkey.
Right.
It was a huge thing, and it really shifted the way that cycling was perceived in Turkey, and it was also about women's safety.
Right.
But I think it would be really lovely to get beautifully dressed people going on a bike ride, say once a month on a Saturday morning
Yes.
around Caboolture.
Right.
And I was wondering if that was something that maybe for these extra rides, is that something that maybe might be of interest?
I'm not 100% sure. We're not your lycra group.
Great, that's exactly what I want.
Yeah.
So I'm looking for people who are dressed in ordinary clothes, but maybe might put on a skirt
Yes.
and a nice blouse and a bit of lippy.
Yes.
And off they go. The photos that they have in Turkey, they don't wear helmets in Turkey.
Yes.
So they have these beautiful hats and they're dressed, and we might have people in sort of a suit or bow tie or something.
I could always ask, and I know that there is a bigger group in Bribie of riders. I mean, we're only a small group. It sounds different. I'm not sure if you'll get it from the U3A group.
Okay.
It's just about the enjoyment and the company of the great outdoors, I should say. Enjoying the companionship. We ride early in the morning. Takes us about 45 minutes from Caboolture to Wamuran. Then we go to CJ's and sit there and talk for about an hour.
What's CJ's? Is that a coffee shop or
yes,
something?
it's a coffee shop. And we have breakfast and just have a chat. You know, we've been doing it now for 4 or 5 years and we're a friendly little group. I don't know if you'd get a lot of takers getting dressed up and going. I don't think so. But, you know, I don't want to put a damper on it.
Because I just had this vision of, you know, Caboolture has such a bad reputation for being a bit down and out.
Yes.
I've really started to look at how much that shortchanges us.
Yes.
I see Caboolture as being very class diverse. I think it's the most class diverse place I've ever lived in. So it's true that 1 in 10 people go to university, which is way below the national average. I mean, yes, it's true that we have a lot of people living in poverty. Yes, that's absolutely true. But we also have people with university degrees, with PhDs. We have a lot of people who are teachers and nurses and doctors. We have a very diverse mix. It's hugely diverse in terms of class. So I couldn't see why, if you had sort of some beautiful ladies who on their maybe regular bicycle ride over to Wamuran, put on a lovely frock and a bit of lippy, and then they went down bright and early in the morning and we could get a bit of a crowd going.
Certainly worth a try, I'm sure. And I would put it to the group. As I said, I'm not 100% sure, but I love the idea of, you know, doing something different. My concern would be that I really don't see Caboolture as being cycle friendly.
It's not cycle friendly. That's why we started this podcast.
Yeah.
And that's a big reason. I mean,
Yes.
I've just done, this morning I put a post on our Facebook page and I also put it on our LinkedIn page. 1% of Queensland's of Transport and Main Roads funding budget for transport, 1% goes to active transport. So that is both walking and cycling.
1%.
1%. Now the UN, the United Nations, recommends 20%.
Really?
67%
Yes.
goes to cars and roads. I've just looked at this from a calendar perspective because I think it makes it, when you go 67%, 1%, what does that all mean? And basically, if you start in January and you look at the different funding models, you've got cars have all the money up to the 2nd of September. Trains get from the 3rd of September through to the 20th of December. And then you've got ferries, buses, walking, cycling from the 20th up to the 31st of December.
Oh, well, that puts it quite clearly that cycling, walking isn't top of the hit parade, let's put it that way, which is a shame. It's a real shame. I mean, I've lived in Caboolture now for 45 years and I've seen a lot of change. But what hasn't changed is, you know, it's great we've got that cycling track from Caboolture to Wamuran, but I've cycled twice or possibly more into Caboolture, not early in the morning, later, and I won't do it again. It's too dangerous.
So where did you cycle? Sort of
I went to the Morayfield shopping centre.
Oh yes, that's a horrible Morayfield Road is just a horrible, scary place. I do go down onto Morayfield Road. I have special things that I do. First, I put as one of those swimming pool noodles as a kind of a crossbar because it's soft.
Yes.
But it's not so wide that it comes out further than the metre on either side because cars have to miss you by a metre. They actually start to look a little bit wider because otherwise I've had people come past 20-30 centimetres from my handlebars, which is illegal, but that's what they do. So I do that, and I use all the back streets, and I'm careful about
yes, I think that's important too. I had a very near miss on not Morayfield, Balmere Road, and from then on I've gone right off the road. I mean, this guy went past me and I don't know, he actually was going so fast he ended up spinning his car. but I was so close to being hit.
Yeah.
But then on the other side, you know, in Queensland, you're allowed to ride your bike on the footpath.
Yep.
As long as you ring your bell and so forth. But I don't think a lot of people know that you actually are allowed to, because I had an incident where I was riding on King Street on the footpath, and I went past this lady ringing my bell. And as I passed her, she said, "You should be on the road." I went on a little bit further and I thought, no. So I stopped my bike and I went back to her and I said, "Excuse me," I said, "do you know that in Queensland you are allowed to ride on the footpath?" I said, "You can Google it if you like." And she went, oh, no, I didn't know that. And, you know, I was very polite. And now she's like my best friend whenever I see her. But it's too unsafe to ride your bike. That's what I found, you know.
And what a lot of people don't know when they're on the road is that bicycles are allowed to be on the road. We have a whole series with John Burrill, who used to be the Transport and Main Roads road rules guy.
Yes.
And he and I go through all the legislation about what are the road rules for people riding bikes. And we're partway through that. We're going to do scooters and also wheelchairs and also walking. So that'll be a whole series on that. So you can always direct them to the legislation on that if ever you want to know.
Well, that's something to know.
Because people don't know that you are allowed to ride your bike on a road. And I know I get a lot of people, "Get off the road." And I had somebody, we were just on a 2-lane on King Street coming from the shops, coming towards Belmere Road Pool. And it was, you know, cars banked up there on the
Yes.
on the left-hand side,
Yes,
in the road shoulder. So I couldn't cycle in there, which is where it's the best place to ride your bike is along there.
Yeah.
Because that's not on the footpath, so it's not a hassle for pedestrians. It's not on the road, so it's not a hassle for drivers. Anyway, so I was on the road. I couldn't be in the left lane. And there was nobody in the right-hand lane because I could see in my mirrors. And he just was he had a big SUV and he was so intimidatory. And this is the kind of thing that really scares us. And I'm a small-framed woman. It made me wonder whether he was somebody who was likely to be domestically violent. That it has that kind of intimidatory energy to it. That's my experience.
Yeah.
How do you feel?
Oh, definitely. I mean, there's two sides to it as far as I can see. The designated cycle paths, now the ones that they've done on Morayfield Road where they've painted them green, fantastic. But the yellow ones with just a line, a photo of a bike, I don't think that's enough, okay?
Actually, but neither of them are enough.
Okay, drivers need to be, informed that we do have a right to be on the road, and maybe for council to make it safe. And I mean, as an older person, I love using my bike. I'd love to be able to go to the library using my bike, to go to the shops using my bike. But unfortunately, in my experience, it's not safe. For my age group, something would have to change to make it safe. That's why on the rail trail, there's no cars. A couple of roads you have to go over, and, council have done a good job to make them relatively safe. That's why we stick to the rail trail.
Yeah, but wouldn't it be good if, for instance, you could go from the rail trail to somewhere else?
Yes.
And this is what Mia and I discussed on the podcast is,
Yeah.
well, you do the rail trail, and the reason why not more people use it as a really good path is because, it doesn't join up to anything.
No.
And then that limits you. I mean, it would be great if you could go up to maybe Palmerston, or you could go up to the railway station even, get on a train and come that way.
I'm wondering if things will change with Warraba, whether, you'd like to think in the future they would think about different means of transport, and hopefully good council planners will incorporate cycling.
I know a lot of the people in the transport team. They have a really fantastic manager there. He's great. And they have really switched on people who would love to do that. All right, so if somebody wants to join your bike riding group,
Yes.
U3A, you get the brochure. How does that work?
Yes, that's correct. Well, they could go on the internet and put U3A in, and it brings up the organisation, and then you'd go to the program section, what's around for the week, and they would see my name and my phone number. Alternatively, they could go to U3A, which is in Chalk Street, go into the office and ask about joining. So,
Yeah, and do you have a limit on the number of people who can join, or do you have any, is it only for people who are retired, or could people younger join you, or how does that work?
Well, anyone would be welcome to join, so there really isn't a age limit.
And so you go every second week?
Correct, yes.
What time and day?
In this summer, we go at 6.
What day of the week?
On Mondays.
Okay.
Mondays at
All
6.
right. At 6. And you just go for your little up and down on the Wamuran Rail Trail, and it goes for about 45 minutes?
45 minutes to get there, coffee and a chat, and then back we go.
And where do you start?
We start at Beerburn Road, which is the start of the rail trail, go through to Wamuran, and there's a coffee shop near the service station at Wam, and we have coffee and breakfast for some, and a chat, and then come back down.
So there's actually a very high, sort of sociable aspect to it. So it's not just about getting the exercise.
No.
It's not just about seeing what's happening in Caboolture and on the way along.
Yes.
It's not just having a coffee. It's not just getting out to see what everybody's doing things. It's a whole package of a range of things that make you feel that you're part of something.
Yeah, for sure, 100%. You've nailed it, the whole package. I think when you work, you have your work colleagues, etc., and then when you retire, you lose that part. So you look for something else, that doesn't involve money or...
If we had lots of bicycle paths everywhere, so say we had good bicycle paths that went from Caboolture down to Morayfield. So the horrible Morayfield Road, somehow there was a magic genie who came along, because to be honest, it's actually very easy to convert Morayfield Road into being a place which would be bicycle friendly. It would take someone with a bit of mettle. The problem with Morayfield Road, the way that it's currently designed, is it's got what they call highway conditions. So if you're on the Bruce Highway, you have these big wide roads, fast speeds. But Morayfield Road is more suburban than that.
Yes.
And it's got all these driveways and shopping centre entries, and you've got traffic lights and people moving left and right and all this. You've got pedestrians. There are a lot of points of conflict on there. So to have people speeding along at a really high speed is sort of poor design.
Yeah.
And if we were to convert Morayfield Road into this lovely space, which it could be done, could be done, and it would generate a huge amount of business in the community. You could have cafes along there, and it would really, so you would have less traffic going through it, and more traffic going to it.
Yes.
And the traffic that wants to come there is great, rather than it being an alternative to the Bruce Highway or something like that, but be really great for the community and things like that.
Absolutely, yeah. Go for it. I would love to see that and make it more user-friendly. Yeah, great idea.
And what other ideas do you have? If council and planners and people designing our urban spaces could do, then what could they do? So were you a teacher, did I understand that?
No, I wasn't a teacher. I was in the special ed office at Tullawong State School for about 20 years.
Yeah, so anything related to your professional or personal history. One of mine is giving some space to people on bikes, to slow down those spaces, to make them friendly for the community as opposed to just driving through as quickly as possible. Anything at all.
What you've come up is great ideas. I'd love to see designated cycling path to the Morayfield Shopping Centre. I use the pathways, which aren't terribly wide, so if they could be widened, and as you said, maybe making it a little bit more greener, more trees and bubblers or...
benches.
Yeah, benches for sure. Thinking about retirees, just making it safe to access the library, the shopping centre. I'm sure you would have more mature people using bikes. But at the moment, as I said, the Wamuran Rail Trail is safe for this age group.
So when you say safe, do you mean protected bike lanes, that sort of thing?
Yes, definitely. Bike lanes. Yeah.
Is there anything else One of my previous guests who hasn't actually had her story published,
Yes.
her children love flowers and vegetables. She loves that.
Yes.
So she thought having flowers grow by the side of the road for the kids walking along, and I thought, gee, it would be great to have, for instance, one of the horticulture colleges or one of those kinds of institutions as a project from February to December have particular strips that they design with pretty flowers or vegetables and make it a group project. And
definitely even murals, or as you went along.
Or so what sort of murals do you think would be nice?
I don't know, something to do with cycling and the enjoyment and the environment and birds and so forth. That would be nice. That would be pleasant, something nice to see as you enjoy cycling.
Another idea that is quite popular at the moment is bringing down the suburban road speed. So currently it's 50 kilometres an hour. When a human being is walking along and they are hit by a car at 50 kilometres an hour, they will die.
Yes.
That's just how it is. If they are hit when it's at 40 kilometres an hour, they will probably die. If it's at 30 kilometres an hour, they will have actually a much less chance of dying. If we were to bring down the road speed, how much do you think that would make you feel like you were able to get out and be safe on the roads? Do you think that would make any difference?
Yes, it would make a massive difference. A massive difference, certainly. But I mean, is it feasible to have Morayfield Road at 30 kilometres?
No, it wouldn't be feasible for Morayfield Road to be. You would need to change that so that it was more pedestrian friendly. So it might not have so much through traffic. It would have through traffic. It would still be at 50 or whatever it is that it is.
I mean, that's a great idea. And I think about the school zones at 40, and when it was introduced, now everybody slows down to 40, or a good 99%. You don't think anything different. Down you go to 40. That's a good idea. I think that would definitely work. Definitely.
Yeah, so I don't know whether it's me just who can't read statistics correctly, but I read the Institute of Health and Welfare website. It's just the Australian statistics, and it's their most recent ones. And it said 1 in 3 Australians is over 75. I think that sounds very high. But
I think it sounds a little high. But
it does.
Yeah.
But I get these statistics and I go, really? But assuming 1 in 3 seniors over 75, the fact that we don't provide the urban infrastructure for them, I just wonder, that must lead to so much social isolation, and I know that that's a big issue in older communities.
Very much, very much. I was in Europe last year, and I went to Holland, and of course, it can be done. We've seen it in other countries, and I just remember the masses of bikes by the train stations. So it can be done. It's just forward thinking, isn't it?
Yeah, so you have a think, well, what do I want to get to? If that's where we're aiming for, then how do we go back from there to here?
Yes.
But currently, what our policy ideas are, we're here and we want to get there, but we'll just keep on doing what we've always done.
And we'll always keep getting what we've always got.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So we do need to think, okay, so what's the outcome we want, and let's work backwards from there.
Well, I mean, aren't we supposed to cut back on car exhausts and so forth?
Yeah.
So why are they not making it more user-friendly?
So I actually looked into, so there's 2 types of emissions that come from cars. One is fuel emissions. Basically, you put your petrol or your diesel in, and what comes out of the tailpipe. That's called fuel emissions.
Yes.
And that just causes a huge range of chronic disease from respiratory. It actually causes also anxiety. It's something to do with the way that the particles affect the nervous system, developmental delay, cognitive decline. Obviously, we have obesity, because if you have people who can't get out and you can't walk easily and get exercise easily, diabetes and cancer and heart and all these other stuff, we know that we have this huge chronic burden. But you also have what's called non-fuel emissions. Brake fluid, tyre dust. Your tyres get bald. That's actually tyre dust that ends up in the air.
Right.
You also end up with stuff on the road, so you end up with the vapour of the oil and the petrol that's on the road on a hot day, that gets lifted up. I did a whole lot of sort of population health costs, just as a bit of a rough guide for myself, because I just thought, oh, well, how much does this cost? Now, road building itself costs about $30 billion a year. That's how much. In its federal, state and local government spending, it's $30 billion a year, roughly. These chronic health costs are about $300 billion. That's a conservative. A year.
Wow.
That's how much that all costs. And yet active transport gets 1% of funding of Queensland's, and roads get 67%.
Boy, that doesn't help, does it?
And so it's not only the 67% of road funding, but it's also actually takes up for the next 5, 10, 15 years of funding, because all these health problems arise, which if you had good active and public transport, so much of that would just vanish in about four minutes. I read somewhere that in the Netherlands, childhood obesity in the Netherlands, it's 1 in 8 children. Here it's 1 in 4 children. And I think it's so many children get driven to the gate, to the school gate and to the shops. They don't have any sense of independence. Everybody has to be driven from everywhere else.
Right.
So when you looked at people in the Netherlands, were you in Amsterdam or were you in the outer areas?
In the outer areas. But yeah, I did go to Amsterdam. But, you know, it just shows it can be done. Yeah. Doesn't it?
Did you see levels of obesity in the Netherlands? Did you notice any difference?
Oh, to be honest, no. It wasn't something I was looking for. But, you know, I did see the amount of bikes that were there, and it was crazy. It was crazy.
And did you see lots of kids cycling around on their own without having to worry about
Yes, see, this is, you know, from when I was a child, or even when my kids were, it's changed so much. It's so fearful, and it's changed how my kids bring up their children.
Before, when we were young, you kind of left kids up to it. You know, you just sort of out the door and then come back at dinner time.
That's exactly right.
But today, if a parent lets their child be in any way unsafe, they're deemed a bad parent. And there's a lot of public views that get onto Facebook page, you shouldn't do that. And there's some really good things that come about that. Children, I think, have much safer lives than you and I did. But it does take out some of the positives that came from that level of freedom.
And I guess cars drive, you know, a lot more four-wheel drives, faster cars.
Bigger cars.
Bigger cars, for sure.
We're kind of coming up to time. If there were anything councils, or we said more safe infrastructure protected bike lanes, murals for the bike, sort of on the path.
Make it attractive.
What other ideas did we speak about, or did you think would be good?
Well, you mentioned cafes along, you know, somewhere where you can get a drink or something like that.
And joining them up.
Yes, absolutely,
Anything else you think would you like people to know? So if they want to join the U3A Caboolture bike riding group for seniors, then, or not necessarily for seniors, but if you wanted to, it's Monday mornings at 6 in the summer, 6:30 in the winter.
Correct, yes.
And to go on, you do have to pay U3A.
Well, you join, it's a $10 joining fee, and because we're not using any of the U3A facilities, it's a free. Okay. So it's only $10 a year, and then you can join a very happy group of retirees and come and join us. Why not?
Fantastic. Well, if somebody was perhaps a little bit younger, would they be, and maybe
They'd
unemployed?
be more than welcome.
Okay. You know, I've been watching the old people's home for teenagers. And I thought, okay, well, if you're in that situation, if you were a teenage kid and you were feeling a bit isolated and you weren't, maybe you wanted company to go cycling, and maybe you didn't, you know, you sort of thought maybe that might be something to do, you'd be up for that?
Of course. Everybody's welcome.
Fantastic. That's what I love to hear. All right, we'll call it there. And thank you very much, Dolores.
You're very welcome. Thank you.
Lovely to have you on the show.
Thank you very much.
Thanks for enjoying Streets and People, presented by Get Around Cabo Car Free. We publish our podcast regularly at the usual places and on our website, where you can find out more about us. getaroundcabocarfree.com.au. That's www.getaround, get around, that's pretty straightforward. Cabo, C-A-B-O, that's short for Caboolture. Car Free, C-A-R-F-R-E-E. There's no hyphen in that. .com.au. Our theme music is The Thief on AM Sound, which is just like our cars on our streets, always stealing the space. So let's stop that thief.